I think we're ready to start. Welcome, everyone. We have the challenging task of getting your attention because there are a lot of very interesting parallel sessions, so thank you for being here. Welcome to our session on future trends from research into market. We will be discussing what's next in healthcare innovation. And we have here really three remarkable individuals that have done this, have been involved in bringing brilliant innovations to market. To start with, Janine Reichenbach, she has a dual role as a professor and also deputy director of the Institute for Regenerative Medicine and the co-founder of Soma Genetics, developing breakthrough therapies for genetic disorders. She is an academic researcher who successfully translated her research into Soma Genetics, and they have recently secured a 10 million Series A investment for developing clinical trials. Then we have Joshua Yordi. He represents more like the passionate explorer, let's say, an entrepreneur who, together with his team at Eracal Therapeutics, identify novel mechanisms of actions, transforming how we approach obesity and also other metabolic disorders. You might have seen them catch the headlines in fall 2024 when they secured the landmark deal and licensing deal with Novo Nordisk for 235 million. And finally, we have Michio Painter. He brings in valuable insights with his expertise in early-stage biotech, both as a founder and as an investor, and now as the head of the Translational Medicines Accelerator. Before I deep dive into the questions, I would like to maybe hand the word to them to quickly introduce themselves, to tell us what are their current challenges or what makes them enthusiastic about entrepreneurship. So maybe let's start with Joshua.
Well, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a biochemist by training from the ETH in Zurich. So did the classic science career. So I'm still very passionate about scientific innovation. I think that's the core belief. What are the challenges? The challenges I'm facing today is finding the next big idea and how to do this in a very smart and clever way to define or found the next category-defining biotech in Europe. So that's the challenge I'm facing. I wouldn't call it a challenge. It's a journey, I would call it.
Thank you, Joshua. Janine, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Janine. I'm, as you said, working at the University of Zurich, and at the same time, I'm one of the founders of Soma Genetics, a startup that we created to promote gene therapy solutions to patients with huge unmet medical need, and we're very happy to have a platform that came out of our research institute that is very translational by its mission, actually, that is able to answer gene therapy unmet needs finally. So in terms of being efficient, being specific, being safe, you might have heard in the news that there is always a little bit skepticism, although these technologies have been around for quite a while, and we now finally have the solution. We are ahead of a clinical trial that should start by beginning of next year for the first disease indication, and beyond that first disease indication, we do have over 50 different diseases that can be targeted with that platform. So there is clearly huge potential. And for me, the challenges are juggling, obviously, between the university position, which is important to keep because the innovation comes from the research lab, and to do then the translational process at the same time, talking to investors and so on.
We will hear more about that. Michio.
Yeah, I'm Michio. I mean, my main role at the university is to support, dozens and dozens of researchers to think about how do they really make good on this promise when they write in a grant or a paper that their, finding could one day help patients. And I try to really help them think through what are all the steps and realities between that paper and ultimately getting to patients. I have kind of seen different sides of things. I mean, I have been a postdoc researcher, I have been a startup founder that left academia to run a company, and I've been an investor investing in early stage companies and seeing how those companies played out over years. So my challenge really is to be empathetic to all of the different positions I see, really challenge the researchers to do the most that they can and bridge worlds between the academic world and the private sector, both of which I think are very necessary to get to that end goal.
Thank you. And my name is Andrea Crețu. I'm the head of Biomed Entrepreneurship Programs at the University of Zurich. In our main program, which is the one here, we train MD, PhD plus researchers that might have an idea in the lab and want to bring it to the market. We had the pleasure of having both Joshua and Janine as part of our program in the past. Of course, now they are very experienced in their journey. But I have the pleasure of really working with super enthusiastic innovators in life sciences, which is why it's a pleasure of moderating this panel. So actually, we are starting by wanting to hear from you. We wanted to do this in a more dynamic manner and not just talk ourselves. But let's hear it from you. What emerging health technologies are you most excited about for the next, let's think, 5 years or so? So we will start seeing yes. Personalization, definitely a good topic. Robot. Longevity, yes.
I think that's the founder experience. You know, you open the bottle and it sprays on.
A metaphor for how entrepreneurship works.
You think it's simple?
Yeah, what are your first thoughts? Of course, if we look at AI-powered drug discovery, this is one where I think a lot of us are enthusiastic to speed things up.
Would you like us to comment or talk, or how should?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
just. I mean, I saw personalization come up, and maybe I give like a bird's eye view from many projects I see at the university. I would say that this is absolutely a topic being explored a lot. You know, personalized, everything from personalized recommendations to cancer. You know, we're lucky to have many different types of treatments for some cancers, but how do you really decide which one is the best for that particular patient? I think we also, I mean, we can speak a little bit about personalized gene therapy, but I think we're really seeing academia push the edge in terms of what can we find, and it's also now a question of how is it going to work in the market? How are regulators going to view an individual treatment? How will you test that? How will you prove that that works? So there's many questions, but for me, this is also very exciting and very active at the university. Yeah.
Josh, any thoughts on the word cloud?
Yes, I mean, I personally think about it a little bit different than the audience here. I think there are known knowns, right? I mean, a known known, there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and I think in these big three categories. The known knowns are some that we see here, so LLMs for drug discovery. I think it's just a question of getting it done. Personally, I think it's already done in many aspects. So yeah, exciting, but it's already passé. Then known unknowns are, I'm now getting really scientific here, but it's the whole power of the omics, which you can apply on a single cell level, and then linking that, so the deep knowledge of a single cell to the spatial, so what is happening in the tissue/organ, and adding on top temporal dynamics. So how do you map all these layers of information to dig out the winning needle, if that winning needle exists? So that's for me a known unknown. And the unknown is the one which came up first, I think.
Personalized prevention was
No.
among
Yes,
first
the
one.
word prevention. Right? I mean, sounds super good. Depends what you mean under it. But how do you move a society to preventive medicine, right? I mean, this is a non-trivial feat, right? Normally it's not reimbursed, so there is no money. So then you're talking about food, and food doesn't work. If not, we would know about it. I mean, I'm now drawing very black and white picture, but I hope that the audience appreciates that there are nuances. Right, so if you talk about prevention, right, you're obviously linked to longevity. Same question here, is it expanding health span, or is it improving health span, or changing lifestyle? But how do you get the money? And ultimately, we are all capitalists, I think, at least. And so that are major unknowns. And so that's how I see the categories.
Thank you. Janine, any thoughts?
Yeah, I obviously like regeneration popping up there. And personalized also. So Mitchell said rightfully, a lot of gene therapies are personalized medicine. And here we need probably to join forces because there is a huge potential. You can apply that to manifold diseases, not only inherited diseases, but also acquired ones in the future. However, regulatory-wise, we are still not there for highly personalized medicine, because regulators want to see strictly controlled clinical trials with huge patient numbers, and that is probably something we need to change together, because the patients are there waiting, and very often patients are, depending on the disease severity, are there to take also a risk in case you can convincingly show them that you have a solution for their life-threatening diseases. But that is indeed something that needs to be solved to make such personalized medicine available to huge numbers of patients, and therefore also for the investors to create return on investment.
So I'm definitely hearing, regulations being very present in advancing all these emerging technologies and making them eventually available to patients. Now, if we go back to our presentation, actually we will go a bit to...
I could add some spice here. I'm obviously an enemy of personalization. Not an enemy, that sounds now mean, but obviously you see there was a strong push in oncology for personalization with tremendous success, so I'm not talking about this. The question, or the problem that investors have, is actually returning, because you're now cutting the patient pool into super minor segments. So some major American investors are pulling out of oncology exactly because of that. So if you look at stock prices, the companies that made tremendous returns in the last 3, 4, 5 years are Lilly and Novo, who didn't push personalization. They go for the big diseases, Alzheimer, cardiometabolics, because there you have a market and there is no strong push there for personalization yet. So that's what I meant with prevention versus an economic realities, right, in the unknowns.
Yeah.
So scientifically, yes, but maybe not for everything.
I mean, obviously, we are very big fans also of a one-fits-all therapy. That's what we are doing currently. But I think in the end, there will be a balance between personalization and such one-fits-all therapies, depending on the number of diseases.
So if you start a company like that, you need to be very smart about the design.
Absolutely.
A pipeline in a pill is probably the label that you can use here. But doing that is non-trivial. So a lot of top teams are thinking about it, and executing is non-trivial.
Actually, we've advanced the discussion quite a lot, because I want to go back to the basic and ask you a very simple question, or a very, let's say, simple from my perspective. How do you assess if an idea is a breakthrough, right? How do you know whether your idea from your scientific research has the potential to not only reach the market, but actually have an impact on patients and eventually on society? And you've done this, right? So if I start with Janine, as both the professor and entrepreneur, basically, how do you know which of the research has more translation potential? What was maybe the aha moment for Soma Genetics where you were like, yes, I would like to develop this further?
I mean, I'm a pediatrician and a clinical immunologist, so I was always very close to the bedside and also to the bench, because by formation I'm a clinician scientist. So, and this is, I think, a crucial point. I think we still need the universities to come up with innovation that we cannot maybe only expect from larger companies. And there we need people that have really a deep insight in clinical needs, but also in the science. And the combination of it will only be the success factor that is then able also to identify what is innovation, what has a huge market potential in the end and needs worldwide.
Collaboration is definitely
absolutely
key aspect there. Joshua, would you like to comment from your perspective? What was the key insight from your academic research that convinced you there is?
Yeah, so I wouldn't do it that way again. So as I'm now looking for a new innovation, I wouldn't do it that way again.
I see.
I mean, it made a lot. I mean, just a very brief story. I built microscopes at Harvard. I liked them for food intake control, so how much an animal eats. And then we thought, wow, cool, you can find something with this, and let's put it into a company. In a nutshell, it's a little bit more complicated, but that's it. So then we did the classic journey, grants, non-dilutive funding, raised the seed, developed the asset, made collaborations. So that was very much what I would call a lone wolf idea, right? Driven partially by my passion. What I tried, and that's what I would recommend every UZH or ETH startup is, to find role models, so to validate that idea. In my case, that was adding Anklesa to the board. So she developed clinical or Orlistat, so this is one of the first anti-obesity drugs. That gave me a lot of confidence that I'm not on the wrong path. And then you can expand on that role model team also for your team, just that you know what you do. So what I do different now is there are so many incredibly smart people out there. There are venture funds that do company inceptions, and they just have $1 billion ready to write. So it's not anymore the fight for 100,000 or 50K there. It's really about crafting a scientific hypothesis that people think, wow, this is so simple, this must work, and you have all the upside.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit what I'm doing now. Playing on different fields, but having that extremely competitive insight from the top firms is obviously an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Where as a postdoc or a PhD or a master from the uni, you simply can't compete, particularly not if you bring, well, I use here now an aggressive term, arrogance, but that's what I see often with, and it doesn't only Switzerland, also America, that if you do a postdoc, they think they're amazing and know everything, and the reality is, probably not, right? So that was a long answer to your question.
What I'm hearing is that we should have switched the order and actually talk about how market should feed into the research to actually bring innovation to the market, because it feels like, of course, clinician perspective, industry perspective are vital and should be very well considered early in the research journey and not do a long development without talking to these important players that eventually bring your...
Yeah, and you can buy clinical opinions, right? I mean, they all work for the top firms, right? Some of the key opinion leaders, right? They cost you $500 an hour or $1,000. I mean, depends who you talk to, but right, as an entrepreneur, you simply can buy them if you want. And then you can buy your opinion to support your case, right? So that's no secret, right? Yeah. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
Mityo, you're seeing
no,
many...
yeah, I mean, I would sort of synthesize
Yes,
these
I
two.
agree.
I mean, it's no problem. I mean, so I'm probably asked 3 times a week, here's my idea, here's a few slides. Should I do this? Is it cool? Is it a great idea, or is it not a good idea? And what I try to emphasize is that understanding whether your idea has value is a process. It's actually not a bathtub eureka moment. It is a process that never ends until you deliver to the patient and you know that you actually got there. And it is one that many people with far greater experience than all of us screw up all the time. It is one that industry screws up all the time. They misjudge something, they have a failure, and it is hard. I sometimes compare it to, how would you climb Mount Everest? Or how would you climb a new mountain that you've never seen before? And sometimes what I hear is, okay, I want to scale Mount Everest. Good idea or bad idea? I mean, irrelevant to some extent. The question is, how do you plot going up there? You must do it very carefully. You must consider every crevasse that's there. You must consider where there's a danger zone, right? And you must carefully route yourself up to the goal, which for us is the patients and the market getting it to the access. But of course, no one would put it in this way. I'm gonna climb Mount Everest. Good idea. No, I mean, it's a silly idea without proper planning. So I always say that there are no good ideas or bad ideas. They're underdeveloped ideas. They're ideas with no thought behind them, right? The other thing, which both of you said in your own way, from a clinical or industry or expert experience, I mean, please, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, I mean, maybe talk to some people that fell into the crevasses. Maybe talk to some people that have climbed up and succeeded to the top a few times. Everyone will find a different way to the top, okay? Every success story has its own unique background. That doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the person that fell down and say, hey, don't go that way. That's still useful information. And that means integrating everything that you said and more.
I love your analogy. And I would emphasize heavily, you need to know everything that has failed.
Yep.
And why you're different, right?
And actually that nicely leads us to the next question. We're talking about how to climb that mountain. There are different ways of doing it. And if we're talking about particularly, let's say, doing this alone or getting VC money or getting a strategic partner on board, what would be some factors that entrepreneurs should consider when doing that decision? And of course, you had all the experiences with a range of these decisions. Joshua, yes, please.
Well, it depends what you want to achieve, right? I mean, again, the analogy to Erakal, building an anti-obesity drug, bringing that all to the market, nobody has ever done this. This is completely unrealistic as an entrepreneurial case, so it's clear you need to scale and you need to partner it out very early. So your customer is not the patient, it's the large pharma who is able to then develop this further, right? So this changes the story. So this is a classic VC money pitch, right? We just heard the odds, right? The odds are 1 in 10. If you're in phase 1, maybe at our stage, it's 1 in 1,000, right? It's completely nuts, right? So I think going to Mount Everest is safer, statistically. And then there is other cases, right? There is a team in building going against certain bacteria that are drug resistant or something, which is not an industry case in most cases, right? Then you need another case, and it's also possible. We see Bioversity who is building this, right? Then you need complete different investor pool. Or if you go for skin burns, you also need that. This is not pharma business, you need someone else. If it's more tech, you need maybe more tech. So I mean, thinking about the shareholder base, their knowledge and understanding what they're getting into, I think is part of the diligence process. But in theory, there are different ways to scale.
Yeah. But I would say people coming from the university and academic environment, they are still not prepared for what is waiting for them there. Yeah. I mean, it's very good initiatives that we do have at the University of Zurich with the Therapy Medicine Accelerator, with the bioentrepreneurship courses, but I think it's still a little bit in its infancy, I would say. Yeah. And I think a lot of people would profit from having that integrated into their studies, just alone how to talk to an investor. It's a completely different language than the academic language, and I think big pharma companies probably as well. I would say, although this is very important, and you touched upon that, to accelerate development, we could do that if we just met with the right people at the right time. And this is something that universities, to my mind, should do. The tech transfer offices should be probably stronger. The best people would need to sit there. And I think there should be a pool of investors and or pharma companies that are there waiting for innovation and that are brought together with these young people that are passionate scientists or medical doctors, but they don't know what the path towards an industrialized product is.
And I think, Michio is a great support for that.
I think I also would say, I mean, to this question sometimes where it's like, do I partner or do I go VC? I would say in a lot of cases it's a false choice. And, ultimately, it's the goal of most small biotechs to partner one day. I mean, very rarely do you have a situation where the small biotech grows and markets and sells something. So in that regard, it's good. They're a customer. I mean, they're ultimately a customer. They want to know when you start, how is it going, right? I mean, how long did you work a little bit with Nova before something happened?
Forever, before we started the company.
So those collaborations are critical, right? So and as a founder, you want to give yourself options. And that's how you have leverage, by the way, as in a negotiation. I mean, you have leverage by having different options for yourself. So if you can raise money from great people, great. If you can have a great partnership, great. But I always say, I mean, try to keep all perspectives in mind. Try not to close doors. Some companies require a little bit more in one direction than the other, for sure. But also, I think in terms of the education piece, I mean, sometimes I jokingly say, you're going to grab a snake out of the bag. I mean, you're going to get bit, right, with one snake. But maybe you should know the differences in those models. What are the expectations of a VC-backed company versus partnering early? How is that going to have ramifications for you as a founder, for any investors, right? So, yeah, explore, get feedback. You know.
Yeah.
How long did you work with people before raising money, for example?
A long time.
A long time. And maybe this is underestimated, that you can't just go and have a coffee and say, hey, give me some money, or let's do a licensing, right? It takes a long time.
Yeah, so it's a process once more, and definitely important to know your environment, and of course it differs in the different therapeutic areas, modalities, and all that.
Just one point to add, right? I mean, I was the passionate scientist. I was super scared that I'm losing my science, which was a very naive thinking.
Yeah.
I'm still naive. But for me, the turning moment was I was gardening, and then the neighbor was working at HBM, is one of the big investors in Zug. And I figured out, I realized that they're an important person. So I said, I have this fantastic idea, you should invest, without knowing what HBM is, right? At that time. Then, okay, come over, right? That's a coincidence, right? Then I met there the guys that are active in my space, and they completely destroyed me. I was completely wet everywhere. It was super stressful, and it was only about science, and I couldn't believe it, right? I mean,
that's cool.
But it makes a lot of sense, right? They invest 50 million or 100 million on their minimal ticket, right? Obviously, they're gonna know the space in and out. But for me, at that time, it was a very, I think one of the most impressive experience that I'm not on the wrong way. I was worried as a postdoc, I'm only talking big market size and cost of goods that nobody cares about, which was for me quite enlightening. And it didn't hurt me. So one important thing is when I went there, I obviously Googled and was knowledgeable about the analyst. Not enough. I would prepare much better nowadays. But still, I could tell them one thing that they didn't know. So if you ever have that thing, whatever meaning, you need to be able to add value to them, even if it's just one single thing. And I knew a company that they didn't know and they should have known. And then they were very happy, and anytime I want to talk to them, I can just drop an email, right? So don't worry of blowing it if you add a little bit of value.
Yeah, this is definitely valuable feedback, and we do see it often. Even in our program, we have hardcore scientists, right? They really want to present their science, and there is a fine line between doing that or having this general pitch that you want to grab attention, you want to put that foot in the door, and you need to be able to tell them something that they either don't know or they are enthusiastic to learn more for. We're trying again. Let's hear it from you. If we're looking at the biggest challenge in bringing research innovations to the market, of course we've talked about this. We heard some ideas. And we would like to hear from you. What do you think in terms of ranking some of the factors that we put in there? We have funding, we have regulations. So we have funding, regulations, team building, market validation, and an open one. If you want to tell us your opinion, if there is anything else that you feel is very important, that you've experienced yourself, maybe, when trying to do this. maybe hearing it from you, if you we're not commenting yet because we're probably waiting on some more answers, but if you would have been asked, let's say 5 years ago, this question, what would have been your answer? And then I would be curious to hear what's your answer now.
I could start.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I started as a founder, I had, and I'm impressed more people didn't say funding.
Yeah, me too.
It's very mature
yeah,
of this
yeah.
audience. I mean, when I started as a founder too, I think I had an impulse which many people do that I speak to too, which is, you know, I just need need funding, right? And you know, I definitely take a different point of view on that now with a lot more experience, which is that, you know, funding will come to you if you build a really compelling company and story and team. And you've plotted very carefully how you get to the top, right, through all of this process that we do. But I certainly changed a lot, also through similar experiences to Yasso, where also I have been, you know, not every investor, but some were incredibly sophisticated and competent in ways around what they were doing that was just so impressive to me that I really understood sometimes the level that they can be at. And when they can really claim they started, you know, 10 companies that made 10 drugs. You know, they bring experience there, and I think I learned to understand that. So I very much also changed myself, but I think my young impulse was like, just give me money, right? I mean, that for sure.
Yeah. Same for you too? 5 years ago?
Ask for
Funding.
advice, get money twice.
Okay, we have a close tie between regulation and market validation.
But nobody said team.
Yeah.
Nobody said team. Yeah.
For me, this is also a real challenge that I see here. I don't know how both of you see it, but people maybe especially underestimate how long it can take to find really, really good people to support you, and also to open up not just, you know, their inner circle, but really, can you find the best people in the world to support your company? How did that work for both of you?
How do we identify them?
Yeah, but I guess that's the thought. How do you get these people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally a little bit shocked that team is 0. Personally think team is like one of the most relevant success criteria. And I would see it as a flag in a team that thinks that they are the best in the world without putting 4 or 5 molecules onto the market and looking into the room. Nobody's 70, I think. So probably your I mean, I always compare it to soccer because people understand that better, I think. And people, in at least Swiss companies, they like to play in the Challenge League or somewhere, right? And if they win Venture Kick, which is a great initiative, so don't get me wrong, they think they're super successful, which is fine for most cases. But if you want to bring a drug to market, right, you need people that played in the Champions League, and not only played there. I mean, if you can get someone that has played in the Champions League on your team, it's going to be a great addition. If you can get someone who was in the final, that's even better, and someone who has won exactly in your disease area, that's going to be a complete changer for your company. So I'm a little bit, I would be nervous that for any company that thinks they have a complete team, the answer is normally no. What was challenging for me was the question, right? And I think everything. I mean, science, team, already just science, right? Science alone, I mean, there is the target, the whole safety, the regulations, and so on. Till you realize, well, I can buy a lot. That helped. But I think everything, right? I mean, I wouldn't pull it. It depends on the phase. So the emotion was when we closed the seed round. Until there, we were like, this is super, and then everything is going to be a nice life. The moment when we signed and we had the apéro afterwards, so we raised 8 million at that time. We had the apéro, we went to the tram, and I texted my friend, oh fuck, now I need to
actually deliver.
Triple this at one moment in time, right? So I think it depends on the temporal scale as well.
We had a question, someone telling us other factors.
Yes, for me the question would also be, how would you not only do the market validation but also do the outreach to the market and addressing the right target group within a matter of time that it's still relevant for them? What would your answers be on that?
I think it depends really on the diseases that you are targeting with your technology. And then obviously you need, ideally you already have an established network of physicians that would be then in the end the ones that prescribe your drug. So if you don't have that, you want to build that up from the beginning ahead of the clinical trial, I would say, even the first clinical trial you're planning.
And I would have a different strategy for you. So either you have connection to, probably you don't, but someone in your network has connection to the key banks in the biotech system, so Centerview or JP Morgan or some that are doing the big deals. So just getting there a call with the disease team would be great. Then you know what they see, right? If you don't, which most likely is the case, then the path is you go to NASDAQ, you look at the companies in your disease area related to, you look at what stage you are, and you download their SEC. So they need to publish. I forgot the number, but they need their SEC reports, right? And in there is everything that is critical for the valuation of that company. And then you read all of them. And it's interesting, they also show who is the CEO, who is the BD person, who is the head of medical CMO, and so on. The whole thing is there because the team is key. Then you write them up. And add value. So don't forget my first point, right? You need to tell them something or give them something that they trigger. And I can tell you, you will write, or I wrote to 50 people or so, and if you get one reply, you're really good. But that's a strategy that works.
I think sometimes people are afraid to ask what they're looking for, maybe because they feel it shows a lack of confidence or something. If you also are going around and you're talking about your company, you're saying, yeah, and by the way, like I have this problem, can you help? Do you know anyone who can help me? But I think also that attitude of kind of like, hi, my name is Michio, and do you happen to know anyone that knows this? Just constant is really important. I mean, I have a similar story of Yasua also about this, right? I mean, so in my company that I started, the people that I ultimately made a deal with, I met the first contact playing basketball, sitting on the sidelines and having a chat. Okay?
But that was Boston.
Yeah,
that's
Boston, but but you were gardening and you made a very nice contact. Maybe it didn't lead, but it was very critical for you, as you said.
Well, that was a personal experience.
But, this kind of, yes, you have to do this a bit. I have just one more comment on the team because I think it's so important, and maybe as an investor, people sometimes don't hear what we talk about behind the closed doors. So as a background, right, I mean, my firm used to review 10,000 companies a year. And, even today, right, I see hundreds of pitch decks a year. It is very rare that I have seen a company concept, brand new, that is not substantially similar in somehow its approach to maybe 2 or 3 others that I've seen in the last couple of years. One of the most common comments in an investment committee is, great idea, wrong team, let's wait for a different team with the same idea. So I want to emphasize that zero shouldn't be 0.
It was 0, yes. Now, yeah, I mean, you've already started with that advice. What piece of advice would you give to an innovator sitting in the room? So that was one of my closing questions, but I have one that is more positive. If you would have one wish for the Swiss entrepreneurial ecosystem, of course, we're talking life sciences here, what would that be? It's a wish that will come true if you just say it. What would be your top? It's a hard question.
You're in the battlegrounds.
You mean from a startup perspective, what we would wish for? Well, you need the most knowledgeable investors, I would say, and/or pharma companies that you get interested in your product. As a goal, so to say, for people that plan to create a company is that really, if you're convinced of your idea, go for it. Yeah? You need that passion, and that was my personal experience talking to investors, basically, that our team somehow succeeded in bringing that over, that we are really passionate about it, that we care for the patients that are waiting, actually. and that together with us, they have a team that is experienced enough and serious enough and has the deep knowledge that is required to being able to make that a success.
It's about those valuable connections.
I would summarize my key advice, separate from what we said, is the following. I would say, be very confident and passionate that you will succeed, but be scared to death that you don't know how best to get there.
But that needs to be improved, actually, how to get there.
Yeah.
So if universities can do something for their young teams, I think that would be the one.
Wow,
One
difficult to add something when Mikio goes first. I'm not going to make that mistake again. No, but I think the only thing is to add is resilience, right? I mean, to what Mikio said, I mean, never ever give up, right? And
So
that can be really hard.
Yeah. Thank you all. I mean, in the interest of time, I know we had a bit of delay. What we wanted to do next is to share with the audience the types of offers that we have at the University of Zurich, but we will rather encourage you to come to our booth, actually. Of course, if we can take it on our side, is to create valuable connections, is to maybe bring role models that show that resilience and grit, and show you different ways to climb that mountain. So well taken, and thank you all for your contributions today.